Good evening. How are you? I've been walking a while, and I was thinking I didn't know if I wanted to say anything at all because, there are several stories that interest me, but in terms of general interest, I don't think they've added anything to the discussion about Trump. But the reaction to the Trump indictment is disappointing. And it's as if America, in all its parts, even despite what they say sometimes, are intimidated by Trump. So, for example, Trump shows up for the arraignment. No one asks him to surrender his passport. Basic, it seems to me. The man has a plane. They don't have standards of conduct for a man who is surrounded by witnesses or suspects in connection with what he did at Mar-a-Lago with classified documents. And so they sort of punt on that as well. So that's a courtroom. And another, and maybe it's the most significant thing, is I can't imagine going into that courtroom and not filing that same day a motion to recuse Judge Cannon. It's inconceivable to me. So, does that mean that Jack or his local team think that if they act trusting of the system, that the court officials, including Judge Cannon, will reward them with professional and ethical behavior? It's ridiculous. I don't know if I've said this before in my various walk and talks. Hard to believe I haven't. But I have this view: you can't propitiate an evil God. You cannot humble yourself, bow low enough, defer to someone who's only looking for the advantage. And that's Trump. You know he comes into the courtroom to try to find a way to master it, though it's not his domain. And then you kind of help him by deferring to him. And you have to wonder, you got bicycles on the road today, pretty exciting. You have to wonder why we think that would work. And none of these people just fell off the turnip truck. These people have been doing this for years. And you have to wonder if they overthink this. Sometimes you write a document, and I edit a lot. I think writing really is editing. But you can edit it so much and lose some of the freshness in that process. If you ever do any painting, the question is, when do you stop? Because there are degrees of looking at your painting as you do it. And in a way, you always have an image on a canvas when you used oils. Acrylics, they dry quickly. Not as bad as watercolors. So what are we doing here? Well, we're doing a light once-over, in my opinion. And we're not buckled down because no one's shouting at us, you know the stakes are big here and you're fighting a bear. Because you are. When I was a prosecutor, I did prosecute these monstrous drug dealers. And I was interested in corruption cases. And I did those. But I remember taking a deposition after I left the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I was special counsel to the Senate Judiciary Committee on an investigation of whether or not Carter and administration officials had allowed C-130 transports to go to Libya in violation of our ban against sending C-130s, large machines, to terrorist nations. And I managed to convince the committee to issue a subpoena to the former head of the Democratic National Committee because he played a role in it. And the question was, how much did he know? When did he know it? And he had a reputation for being powerful, a speaker, a man that had to be respected. Voice went deeper, very emotional. He had several ranges of personality. He was an impressive guy. And I knew all this before I started taking his deposition. And I found myself looking at him during the deposition, sometimes as he was answering questions, thinking, I have to stop looking at him because he's entertaining me, and realize he's trying to intimidate me, and I have to deal with that. And he was a master, and years after my report was filed, he kept asking me if I would change it for his grandchildren. I never did. I told him I couldn't. But what's that story about? That story is about how do we handle other figures? Do we attribute to them powers they're not entitled to have? Meaning a respect for them as persons when you know what they've done is dead wrong. And perhaps if they didn't have this other set of superpowers to intimidate and to cheat and to steal and so forth, then you wouldn't be talking to them in the first place. So I get the feeling that many people, not just the Republicans, are intimidated by this crook. This man who is sleight of hand, misleads a nation, those who support him, betrays people all the time and it doesn't sink in. I guess people who think of themselves as so vulnerable and unworthy to question a person such as this. So what would be another example? Well, another example is he leaves the courthouse and everybody says, wow, he went to the Cuban restaurant, instead of saying, what kind of evil person who treats the court with such disrespect and goes out and campaigns as an affront to what? Intimidate the court by that action. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. That's Trump. We know it. You can't even defend yourself by saying, oh, I was surprised. How could you be surprised? Since 2015, he's like this. Those of us who lived in Manhattan and New York, we know what he was like when he came out of the slime that was his contracting business, his failed casinos, his building projects in Manhattan. We all knew him. His phony calls in which he pretended to be someone else to hype himself for page 6 in the New York Post. That's who Trump is. A man who associated with mobsters, who did deals with mobsters, who had them as tenants in his buildings. And this guy intimidates people in the government, people who cover him, and as a result, we're weakened by that. So, what should we be doing? We should be covering him less in some ways. And when we do cover him, we should call him out for what he's doing. We shouldn't be saying, wow, look what he did. It's like he says to somebody standing next to him, here, hold on to my beer while I do something outrageous that you'll comment on and think is cool, and then report. And I'll get more free eyes watching me on TV, reading me in newspapers. That's his objective. That's what he wants. And unless and until we stop hoping this will be easy, it will not only be hard, we are conceding the ground to him by which he may succeed. He may succeed in finding a hung jury. He may succeed in having people support him. Even though among the charges are that he cheated in the election, the New York case. When he left office, he took classified documents that can endanger our national security. That in between these two things in Washington, D.C., there's an investigation about how he tried to overthrow the government to put himself in as president, though the people voted against him, though his arguments for doing so were a fraud. And he did it with all these other people. And when the vice president wouldn't bow and defer to him as others have, he pivoted. Violence is fine with him. And now we run around talking as if maybe that didn't happen. Like this is a long repeat story of the emperor has no clothes. The emperor has no clothes, and yet people think they see him in a raiment of gold and power, authority and righteousness, the savior of the nation. There's no defending ourselves against fools. But worse than that is to be taken in ourselves and not to fight back at every turn. We don't need to say we're being fair when we're being fair. There's no need for that. Just do it right. When Trump does something wrong, point to him. When the lawyers leave him, say why. They're leaving because they don't want to be part of his conspiracy. They're leaving because they want to be paid. They're leaving because they were weak of ethics and character when they accepted the assignment. They wanted the moolah. They wanted the publicity. They wanted the exposure. But this is not that great case, meaning a case like the monkey trial, in which we're debating whether science rules or religious nonsense. We're talking about things that matter. This is not about the segregation of America. It's not that kind of a trial. It's the trial of a common criminal made large by the sufferance of people who fail to act time and time again. And that's unacceptable. And if that doesn't change, he may be in the White House again. And if that happens, I may do many more oils and start throwing pots and do more gardening. But I'm of the nature that I can't do that. I believe that our country means something. I believe how we treat others means something. And I believe that these derivative humans who are not of that nature, who are alien to humanity, who are in it for themselves individually, those people have no business in government. They have no business being elected. And of those in the Congress and in the various positions around the country who say otherwise, may they go to hell. May they be damned and go to hell. Because that's what this nation is not about. People didn't die. We didn't lose treasure and blood to lose our democracy, to lose our republic, to a bunch of fools who probably couldn't pass a basic math test. A man who cheers himself on because he has no gross cognitive deficiencies. Well, we know that's not true. So, my advice today to us folk who give a damn is that at every opportunity we contribute some small amount of funds, some time, at the water cooler tell people, why aren't you upset about this? And don't think DeSantis is a good substitute, you Republicans. This guy believes he's Jesus. He has God's power, God's fighter. You think I'm exaggerating, but that is precisely the ad that he has put out. So, we're having a rough time in America. We have made great advances. Let's not lose the ground we gained. First and 10, do it again. I say that like I follow sports a lot. So I say good evening to you from my trees in the forest. Beautiful today, absolutely beautiful. So here I am, goodbye from the Cathedral of Trees. Bye-bye.